All right, good evening, listeners. Welcome to Motley Crude, episode 24. I'm Kevin. This evening with me, unfortunately, Ryan and Andrew are out, but I do have Danny stepping in as our once again guest host here with us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Another wonderful night. So it's another
Awesome.
time to record.
Yeah, good stuff. So this we're gonna have a bit of a different episode this evening. We're gonna be talking about CTC, the Canadian Tabletop Convention that happened here in Ottawa, and then the Old World GT event that Danny ran there. And then we're also going to be doing games. We're going to be talking about specifically my matches there. We were supposed to talk also with Ryan about his, but he couldn't make it this evening. So we're just going to be powering through my matches, and I'll be giving you out there some tactical sort of insights, how I was looking at things, evaluating the game state and all. So yeah, I'm excited to do an episode on game reviews. Before we get there though, what's new? What's new in your hobby, Danny? Aside from running that event?
Right now, I am just trying to work more on my White Lions. I'm still trying to figure out a final list. I'm just trying to get some like an actual list planned out for September. 'Cause I'm planning to go to a GT then.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out that list so I can figure out exactly what I need to get painted. Because more than likely, I'm going to be painting like at least 30 White Lions. Whether they're going to be woodsmen or actual White Lions, I'm not sure. But I think I got another 5 almost ready. Plus, I got my first Archmage finished, and I just got to end up working on some unit fillers and converting up a VSP. But I've also been talking to a buddy of mine, Evan, about like a project that I keep going back and forth on, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can paint that up. I don't want to say it here because I'm just going to keep that to myself for a while, or I guess with
Okay.
him. But
Nice.
yeah, he's been like, "Oh yeah, I should totally do it. I'll convert something up for you." And I'm like, maybe." And I keep going like, "I got the White Lions. I got those on my table. Let's focus with what I have before, you know, I end up just buying more gray miniatures and not getting around to painting them."
Yeah, I've been having a little bit of the same issue here. I'm obviously painting away at the Wolves of the Sea, but I've been thinking about that Minotaur Army of Infamy that's right around the corner, and then also thinking about Dogs of War related stuff, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But there's a I'm having the same issue essentially as you
Yeah,
are.
it's hard.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Also, because like painting an army takes so much time that you have plenty of time for your mind to start wandering and thinking about other stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And for your so the event you're thinking of in September, that's the one in Montreal, right?
yeah. That's the one. Yeah, I won't be able to make Capital City this year, so I wanted to at least go to another one. And if I have something like a deadline, I'm more likely to get models painted versus just for a future play. So that's the plan. Give myself a
Yep.
deadline, get it all painted up. I'm also working on some bases, trying to figure out a
Okay.
basing scheme because I did a few for some Sisters of Avalorn, and I didn't like how the bases turned out. So now I'm trying a different way.
Okay.
So I'm
What do you?
still, yeah,
So
I'm just trying to go
yeah.
for just a classic, I guess older style base with like the sand and flock. I'm gonna try that because I want to do the green trims, which I've never done before. I want them to look like an old style High Elf army, very clean. So I want that bright basing as well. I'm used to using pigment powders for my basing, but it
Yep.
doesn't look well with the cleanness of the model and then kind of the dirty base. Doesn't kind of work together.
Yep. That makes sense. That makes sense. They're gonna go super classic with the goblin green bases.
Well, not goblin
Crazy.
green on the top, but it's gonna be goblin just
Okay.
like the goblin green trim, and then it's gonna be
Yeah.
like the
Fair.
brown on the top. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I'm also thinking about basing schemes for my Wolves of the Sea right now. I think I've come to terms with the fact it's going to have to be snow. So I'll have another army based on like ice/snow type bases. It'll be different than my Night Lords are on icy bases. I think I've talked
Mhm.
about this in the past, but it'll be different how I am envisioning it now. But it just didn't make sense at the end of the day to have like the Norsemen barbarians not be on some sort of cold themed base.
Yeah,
So
but yeah, I almost went with like uh, Wolves of the Sea Army back when it first kind of got announced,
yeah,
just because I wanted to do a Skeggy army. So like
Yeah.
marauders
Okay.
that are
So
over in the new
jungle
world.
themed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it worked out well. Like that list also has the what are the elite marauders there?
Berserkers,
No, not berserkers. The ones that are mounted.
Huskarls.
Yeah, the Huskarls. I wanted to put them on cold ones because then it would work for like their instead of heavy armor, they had the cold ones, and that was a project also wanted to do a while ago, and that never came
Yeah.
to
So
happen.
so speaking of cold ones, when I did my Amazon warband for Mordheim, I had this crazy idea to make an entire Amazon army for the old world, and I was thinking of which army I was gonna proxy them in as, and I thought maybe Bretonians and have like the Amazons on cold ones be like the knights, and then have like some, because also Pegasus kind of fits with the Amazons, obviously. So I was thinking of that. But in the end, after doing the full like Mordheim warband there, like the 15 models and all like
Yeah.
the BSB equivalent, all that kind of stuff, I was like, this is going to be an incredibly like time consuming, expensive, and like massive
Oh,
hobby project. And I sort of gave
yeah.
up on it there.
Oh yeah. I get that. I was gonna put like scales, cloaks and everything on the marauders, and I was like, that's too much. I'm never gonna get this done in time for like actually anything.
Yeah,
Maybe a
exactly.
500-point army, and that's about as far as I'd ever get.
Yeah, and then there's like, especially with something like Wolves of the Sea, I'm slightly concerned that how is GW or SDS going to treat Armies of Infamy when this game gets a version 2 or whatever in 3 years, sorry, in a year and a
Yeah,
half. Yeah, that is a concern. I mean, Norsca is something which I think has some play going forward and could be brought into the game. I mean, it has its lore bit in the main rule book. It's its own faction in Total War Warhammer. It's getting more support in Total War
yeah,
Warhammer in the upcoming DLC. So like, it's not a pipe dream. This isn't
yeah.
like pygmies or or
No,
something
no,
wild there, but like, yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
yeah, no. So that's good. That's good stuff. So for hobby on my end, so aside from CTC, which we're going to be talking about in like a lot of detail shortly, I've continued to paint the Wolves of the Sea. I did bang out and finish those two big Tauruses for the event because I needed three.
Oh
I think
yeah.
you saw those, right?
Yep, I've seen those two guys. They look great on the table.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm super happy with how they came out. Like, it was a quick paint job, and you could really tell, like, my old Taurus, like the 1993 model, was painted like, I don't know, 15 years ago. Yeah, in like twice the amount of time that I painted these two. So I was made me happy with the progress I made on the, like, as a painter since then, for sure.
It's always
Um,
great to actually have some of those old models that you still have. Like I feel like most of my collection is kind of rotated or gone. Like I have a few older models, but to see your progression over those like years is always a nice thing to see.
yeah, and very, very evident when you put them like side by side on the table, like in the same game on the tabletop, right? That's pretty crazy in and of itself. Yeah, and then after the event, so I got back to painting. I'm working on a Chaos Sorcerer Lord or like Shaman or what have you there for my Marauders. I converted this model out of the new Marauder Chieftain, or sorry, the Dark Oath Chieftain. Like, that's like on this horse. It has kind of a real like Franz Frazetta, like Conan artwork vibe
Oh
going
yes,
on
yeah, the
there.
one that's on the rock there, kind of looking
Yeah,
over.
exactly, right. So
Yeah.
that guy, and so I converted him, and then there was like an AOS Chaos Sorcerer, like a unique model, that like a celebration whatever model that was released by GW there, that has like a staff that's on fire in the air, and it's carrying like this book with like all the Tiantian flames coming out and stuff. So I kind of mixed and matched between the two models. So he's like on that horse that looks all that looks sick, and then it's got the flaming staff and stuff. So, anyways, I think it's going to be a really cool model when it's done.
Yeah, that
Really,
sounds
really.
nice to me. It also sounds like it's gonna be a fun project to paint.
Yeah, I'm already having a blast. Like, when you're banging through troops, like just rewarding yourself with a cool conversion character after is like always feels like a lot of fun. Um, yeah, and then aside from that painting, I also played one game before CTC. So my buddy Brian came over from Maine to attend the event with us. So I had him stay over here, and then we played a game right before the event to sort of shake off the rust. With the new baby, I've been playing more online than in person, so that was good. It was Bretonians versus Chaos Dwarfs. was led me to a false sense of confidence before heading into the event. Because I did win that game at home and maybe lost one against Bretonians at the event, which we'll cover later. Okay, good. So let's move on here a little bit, Danny. We got some
Yep.
rumors and some news to talk about, right?
Of course.
Yeah, first things first. So were you surprised by the arrival of Beastmen right away on off the tail of Wood Elves?
Honestly, yeah, I was actually really surprised. I was expecting them like 2 weeks from now. I started hearing rumors that Cathay would be coming sometime soon, and I was like, well, there's no time for Beastmen, so maybe they got pushed back because Wood Elves already took the spot. So Beastmen coming in quick is I think everyone wasn't expecting that, so it's good.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting it. So we have a ton of rumors that sort of feed off of those two things that you talked about to discuss. The first one has been overtaken by events. So the first thing I was going to tell all our listeners out there is that Beastmen were coming very very rapidly. For release after Wood Elves. Of course, that's already been announced, so I seem like somebody who's just parroting the news right now. But at least it gives me more confidence in the next few things I'm gonna be discussing here in a
Yeah,
second. So the first thing to sort of talk about is Cathay. According to what we've heard, there's more in the production pipeline for Cathay than what's been announced at was it at in March? Was it Adepticon? Probably. It was
yeah, yeah. I get the events mixed up every so
yeah,
often.
I think it was Adepticon. Regardless than what was announced back in March. So Cathay is coming in allegedly in three separate waves. So the first wave of Cathay is going to release in July 2025. So that's only at this point a month away, essentially. The second wave of Cathay will be released, according to what we've heard again there, will be released around December 2025 to January, sort of that end of year timeframe. Wave 2 will focus on the less elite portions of the army. So that includes peasants as well as range troops. It's something that, when we first talked about the army, I said was sort of missing from the from how the army is built in Total War, that sort of peasant aspect. So that'll be the focus of Wave 2. And then Wave 3 will round out sort of the Army's options. I don't have a time frame on this one, but specifically what we heard is that this wave will include sort of elite units for the Army, or more elite units, specifically the Longma Riders, which are kind of your Peg Knight equivalent. We did see like a Longma Lord as part of Wave 1, and then having the unit to go along with them. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
So I'm just generally excited. I'm happy that they're coming in quick, which for a new faction of the army. Like I remember talking to someone like the last faction that was added to Old World or just fantasy in general was back in like 2003 with Ogre Kingdoms. So it's really nice to see them actually bringing out a new faction and expanding upon it. And I did spend the weekend talking to someone because I was trying to go off of how they've released other units in the past.
Yeah,
And I know Jade Warriors in Total War. I haven't played it, but I know they have like a combat version and a crossbow version.
yeah,
So I can definitely see them in the starter box, like the box they're coming out with, releasing just the combat options, and then when they release the Jade Warriors box, like to buy separately, they might throw in another sprue that could be for the crossbow option, because that's
yeah.
similar to what the Bretonian Peg Lord was on the Royal
Nice.
Pegasus.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was
you're right.
like there was an extra sprue for the BSB option, I believe. So I think they might do something like that, and it's a quick way to like get people to have stuff, and then oh, do you want this other option? So now there's another reason to buy the Jade Warriors.
Yeah,
It's
or you
almost
sell it as an upgrade or something. Yeah,
yeah, it's also kind of like they do with the Knights in 40k. The
yeah,
Knights like both Knights, they just came out with another option, which is another sprue getting added to that box again for like the third time, I think, for more options. So I can see them doing stuff like that. But Wave 1 coming July is awesome. It's soon. I'm assuming that's just going to be everything kind of announced in
yeah,
there.
exactly. Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly it.
yeah, so I'm just excited for more. I'm hoping the rules are going to be fun. And yeah,
Yep, and you know,
Yeah.
we were talking about how, like, when they released sort of when they previewed the models, we were on the show here. We're discussing like it's a bit of a short army list if you're like for the old world, but at least you know if that second wave is coming in December, it's not that long of a wait. You know, by the time you've painted, you know, that first launch box and whatever else, two or three, four other boxes you pick up, you're probably looking at a September October timeframe, and then if
Oh
they
yeah.
release in December, like you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good spacing there. And it's also like kind of gives them space there in case they want to release any books or units or characters that they haven't released yet, kind of fill in the blanks there. So there's still
Yeah,
going to be stuff constantly coming out, which would be great.
yeah, for sure. And I think like that sick dragon that they previewed back in March. There's a number of other similar named characters in that in the lore for Cathay that could easily slot into some of those other waves or
Yeah.
whatever. So, yeah,
I just, yeah,
exciting
because
time.
I'm looking forward to it. I was talking to someone too over the weekend about their characters. Like, if you wanted to have a dragon, it's a named character, so it'd be interesting to see how that turns out on the table. Like, if everyone's always going to be bringing a named character, or you're just going to have a couple like almost Empire style army with just humans and maybe like someone on a long like the Longma.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. Like, I think there's probably still a lot of space to be covered narratively for Cathay, and like who knows, maybe those dragons have their own children and they're
Yeah,
like unnamed dragon characters or something.
yeah,
Um,
or
so
offspring
yeah,
of some sort, or
exactly, like
yeah,
demi dragons or demi drakes or what have you. Like, I don't know. There's
yeah,
there's options. There's space.
yeah.
Okay, cool. That's the Cathay stuff, but that is certainly not all. So the next thing, Danny, is the much discussed competitive update. It's been called like variously online, sort of a general's handbook, competitive play pack, a rules update, etc. So what we've heard about that pack is that it's going to release in the July/August timeframe, basically at the same time as Grand Cathay will arrive. I've got very little information on what is in that book, but what I have heard is that it looks more like a 1.5 version of the rules rather than General's Handbook in like the AOS sense of the term. If you're sort of familiar with how that rolls, or Chapter Approved is another good example for 40k.
Yeah.
Um, Also, it appears that some of the information that I have had, however, is that there appears to be like some desire on part of the specialist design studio to make significant changes to the magic system. I'm sure you've all heard in other rumors elsewhere online stuff, about caster levels and bonuses and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, it's looking more like a rules update, and the time frame that we have for that is like a July August. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, this book has been talked about for I feel like a full year, or if not more. So I'm just happy to, if it does finally come out, to have some changes, because I think everybody wants a little tweak. Maybe the monsters come down, infantry gets a uh, little bonus as well. The biggest thing I'm looking forward to is if they do make changes to the magic, the way all these, if they make some changes to magic to make level twos a little bit more competitive or a little better, um, or bring level fours down, it could bring more play into some of the other army lists that people aren't playing because you don't have access to a level four and only level twos. Because
Yeah,
that's probably been my biggest gripe with the whole magic in this system is I played a lot of 6th and 7th before this edition came out, and in
yeah,
that version, a level 4 was pretty much equivalent to two level 2s. The only difference is level 4 could throw more dice at casting a spell versus level 2 couldn't. But when you went to dispel, you could use as many dice as you wanted. So it kind of made it kind of balanced. Like you could still have the same amount of spells. No one got any pluses to cast. And then 8th edition was very much your level 4, you got +4 to cast. This is how this is working out as well, but you're kind of stuck with how certain spells cost or need to be cast on 11, which is pretty much impossible if you don't have that +4.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I would,
I think there would need to be a change to that too. There to some of the
yeah,
casting values, otherwise it wouldn't make sense, right?
yeah. So I would like to see some kind of change to make level 2s more impactful in the game just entirely. Like, yeah, they're not as good. They only know 2 spells, but I would still like to see them as an option versus every army needing a level 4, which is a little frustrating because then it pretty much just turn like certain people just look at certain army lists and like the null list and like, okay, you don't
Yeah.
have a level 4, let's not take it.
Yeah.
Even high elves, one of the high elf ones. I feel like there's other ones out there.
There's quite a few. There's quite a
Yeah.
few that don't have
It
access to
feels like
level
it's like
4.
one in every book is like one
Yep.
caster. Or actually, it's the Wild Hunt is the other one I'm thinking of too. They don't
Wild
have a level
Hunt.
4.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
the rumors on the Minotaur Army of Infamy are to be believed, that one doesn't have level 4s either.
Yeah.
Exiles doesn't have level 4s. There's quite a few. Knightly Orders doesn't really have level 4s. Like there's one of the orders that can, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, it doesn't. So, yeah, I think you're right, and I hadn't even thought of the angle of like suddenly this makes, if these changes are true, it does make some of these armies of infamy more palatable, let's say, because they're no longer like so far behind on the magic side.
Yeah.
As far as like the overall book goes, like I'm sort of along with you, and certainly what Ryan would say if he was here, that like I'll believe it when I see it. I've heard so much about this thing. I think since like January, right, that we've heard about this book coming out. So, anyways, I'll believe it when it shows up. I guess my personal sort of thing that I want to see in there is a points pass. That's like my number one
Yeah.
wish. I haven't
Yeah,
heard anything about that though. Yeah.
yeah, you've
Sorry.
been pushing the point pass for a while, but I don't know if Specialist Design Studio does that normally. Like even with Heresy, they've never done one. So
I
I
know.
don't know if they will. I can just see them trying to tweak some rules and that'd be it.
Yeah,
Much
it
as we
just
would
seems.
all like that.
Yeah, I mean it seems wild, like that a game that's based on a points economy, you're not going to touch it in any way, shape, or form for years and years on end, is to me seems crazy. And like,
Well, we're
you know,
going back to fantasy days when like
yeah,
6th, 7th, 8th, no points changes ever.
agreed.
Yep.
Except that I think they've moved on from that time quite a bit
Yeah.
in sort of how the
Yeah.
game's designed, but whatever. It neither here nor there. I haven't heard anything about points, so it is. That's just like a wish. Okay, and now the most exciting stuff. The third sort of rumor that we have here going is so following the release of Cathay, there's a second new or newish army that's coming to the old world. That army is Tilea, so not the Dogs of War, but Tilea specifically. So your Warhammer Fantasy, not Italy. We don't have too much info. I didn't receive too much information on it. The only things that I have is that there's going to be a focus on pikemen and crossbowmen units in core. Anybody who's read the old army book will probably tell you that's kind of a given. However, we've heard that the pikemen can allegedly fight in 4 ranks, and that they also have those pikes have impact hits, like reverse impact hits, sort of when they're charged. Additionally, we've heard that coming along with Tilea, obviously, there's the return of some of the Dogs of War, sort of the Dogs of War regiments of renown, pardon me, the ones that are most thematically appropriate with Tilea. So think things like the Marksmen of Miragliano, the Al-Qatani Fellowship, Vespero's Vendetta, the Galloper Gun, the Republican Guard, Birdmen of Catraza, like those kinds of units, not necessarily your man flayers or your armored orcs or what have you. So yeah, any thoughts on this one, Danny?
Oh yeah, like this is an army. I remember back in 6th edition having the little booklet, and I'm sure I have a copy of it in one of the Warhammer annual books. But always going through it and trying to decide like how can I make a theme list? Because back in the day, it was just very generic options, like just
Yeah.
pikemen, crossbows. It pretty much allowed you to create your own kind of army with these
Yeah, yeah.
rules. They
Yeah,
weren't.
and then there was all the entries for like orc mercenaries, ogre mercenaries, halfling mercenaries, all that kind
Oh,
of stuff.
there was lots in it. It was a lot of fun. So I'm just excited that they might just bring back some of those metal models because as soon as they do that, they're gonna make a ton of money just because people have been wanting those models for years and paying eBay prices for some of them are insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have I think 16 of Ruglug's armored orcs like sitting on
Okay.
my shelf, which I mean they probably aren't gonna come back because I don't think Ruglug's around at this time.
Nope.
But you listed off a bunch of units here, like the Vendetta, the Bronzinos, Galloper guns.
Yeah.
I had those units a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, I don't think I'm ever going to get around to these. So I end up getting rid of them, which I regret.
Yeah. So this,
But
hey, you just stopping you for 1 second. Like you bring a
yeah,
super interesting point that I was discussing with Ryan a few days ago. Is like I'm not sure on the timeline how this works because you know, presumably Vesporo, for instance, or Rico from the Republican Guard aren't alive like 300 years earlier. So how do these units sort of fit in? I guess my guess would be that they'd just become like sort of an elite, crossbowman or duelist or pikeman unit, what have you, rather than being like the actual regiment of the Bronzino's Galloper guns or what have you there.
yeah, I could see that. Like, also, I know with I don't know if they've ever dated any of those mercenaries, but they could be around. Like, sometimes they have characters that were alive 200 years ago before
Yeah.
the 8th edition timeline, so there's a possibility.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right, but like, so when I was looking in the book, I was reading through that book today, like the old, I think it's sixth edition one. Anyways,
maybe I
the
think it was the 5th edition one, which is
fifth.
yeah,
Okay, perfect.
yeah,
Yeah. So the fifth edition one, and like in a lot of cases, the captain for the unit is like the actual like dude that it's named after, and they came together. So it would be hard for like it's not like Vesporo was a guy who lived 300 years ago who got the unit named after him. Like, and I don't know if this is the case this specific regiment there, but like he's one of the models in the box.
yeah.
So we'll have to see. But speaking also of timelines, if that fifth edition timeline is to be believed, it would sort of line up with these rumors. And I don't know that the SDS pays a lot of attention to this. There, I can't speak on their behalf. But as far as the timeline goes, I believe the time where the old world is set is sort of before there's this big battle that happens in Talea, where after they hire some orc mercenaries from like the orc army that they defeat, and then they sort of open up to having all these other races come in as sort of mercenaries. So the old world would be set before that moment, and then it would make sense to have only the like Chilean or human type mercenaries in there.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, do you understand what I
Yeah.
mean? Or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I get you. I mean, it's also they've been pretty good with like where the timeline is. There's always some kind of big battle or some event that's about to happen or getting close to happening, which would be good.
yeah,
So I,
yeah,
I
for
would
sure.
enjoy that.
Yeah,
You also mentioned pikemen earlier. I went and
yeah.
actually looked up the rules from 6th edition for pikes,
Okay,
which would be interesting if they did work this way. I'm sure they'd be probably tweaked again. But in 6th edition, they fought in 4 ranks, just like you mentioned. They were
okay.
two-handed. They did have the strike first if they were charged, and they had +1 strength if they were charged by cavalry. And this would all happen in the front arc. So it'd be interesting if they still did that,
Yeah.
because having I don't know how wide you go, but you could have quite a few attacks.
Yeah, yeah, that
20.
would be, yeah. They're not great attacks, but they are like a lot of attacks. You're right, and there is absolutely a quality, like a volume is a quality of its own. And then when I was, so that's interesting because when I was looking in the fifth edition book for this, the only thing I could find was the impact hits on like some specific pikes that were, I think, magical items actually that
Okay.
belonged to some of like the mercenary captains. But there was very much the like when this unit is charged, you get strike first and like impact hits. I think it was D3 or something for the one I saw today there, but it made no mention of arcs. Like, so even if you were charged in the rear or whatever, so I probably prefer those. I
But
probably prefer those rules from sixth. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of gives a reason to flank a unit versus just like, oh, they're gonna hit me no
Yeah.
matter where I go.
Exactly, and I really, if this is the case, I really like the idea of like the, let's call them reverse impact hits, so everybody sort of understands as like a counter to, to cavalry or even to big monsters. Like if your dragon's getting a little bit low on wounds, and you know that you're going to take like, because it's 4 ranks, I don't know,
Yeah,
15 impact hits coming in. Yeah, they're not very strong, but maybe that's what pushes you over the edge, right?
yeah, it could just be like they strike before impact hits,
Yeah, maybe,
like
or yeah,
boost attack.
exactly.
So they
Hmm.
still got to hit. They're not auto hit. If they auto hit with like reverse impact hits, I think that'd be
Yeah,
really good.
yeah.
But I think they might still need to roll the hit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll have to see, right?
yeah,
We're just guessing right now.
yeah,
No idea.
yeah.
Okay, good. That's it. That's basically it for the rumors. So if you want to hear about CTC and the event and the Old World GT there and the event recap, that's what we're just about to transition to. Before we get to my games, though, because Danny here was the TO. Let's start by talking about the event more broadly. Danny, can you give us like a quick sort of history of CTC and specifically the Old World or Warhammer Fantasy Battles events that sort of been held there?
Yeah. So I only heard about CTC probably about 2 years ago, but it's been going for a few years now. I believe it was 2018 or 2019 it started, and it ran for about 2 years. And then COVID hit, and then I think it wasn't ran during COVID, and it's been kind of gathering steam the last couple of years. But there was never any fantasy battles or old world events due to it kind of coming out post 8th edition.
Okay.
But Ryan was the one that told me about this. So pretty much after the old world pretty much dropped, or pretty much as soon as I knew it was coming out, I thought I'd like, oh, maybe I can run a bigger event at a different location and talk to the organizer Joe, who was the one running it. He was perfectly okay with hosting another event since CGC usually has about a dozen different games going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we end up getting, I think last year, so 2024, we had our first 2-day GT in the area, and I think it was the first in Canada, which is awesome. We managed to get 24 last year and got sold out this year at 28 players, which was an improvement. So I'm happy with that. But CTC overall, it's a great venue. We end up having, I think, over 250 people playing different games over the weekend.
Yep.
This year. So 28 Old World. We had, I think, it was 42 Age of Sigmar, 50 some, 40K. We had Bolt Action. Bolt Action.
Flames of War, all the
Flames of
Star
Wars.
Wars
Yeah.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, like 4 different Star Wars games. Shadespire is happening.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was happening. So there was a ton of different games all weekend. So it's a great different venue, a great event just in general. So, and it happens every year. So now we're just looking to expand because I think we may have outgrown our location now. So I'm looking forward to what else comes from that now.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. It has so most of the events that we have in the area here are very much like tournaments, for a specific game system. And CTC has a bit more of like a convention feel to it for sure. Minus the millions of vendors, but like aside from that, it does have sort of that like overall organization and feel. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. And I think what I heard, Danny, was that you originally were set for 32 players, but we had to sort of cap because like overall the venue was getting maxed out. Does that
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we were. I wanted to get 32 because I wanted to add one more prize there, but I was pretty much told unless I needed a certain amount of people to get
Yeah.
a. So I was good with that, and I wanted 32 because if any more than 32, there's a chance that we'd have two undefeated players at the
Yeah.
end, and kind of why I wanted to eventually have the 32.
Awesome.
That's next year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so then yeah, on my end, like overall, I thought like I really enjoyed the event. As I mentioned last episode and at the beginning of this one, it was my first in-person event in a while. So I was just really happy to throw dice around with all of you guys out there. And yeah, I thought it was a great event. It was well run. Like there's no issues that came up really. And no, so kudos to you on that one. What were your sort of thoughts on how everything ran?
Overall, everything ran pretty well. I know just myself, I'm not the most boisterous person, not very loud. So trying to get a crowd of people together to kind of let everybody know what's going on, it's a little difficult in the venue because I know
It's
my
loud,
voice
yeah.
doesn't travel. My voice doesn't travel, and I know day one, like just talking to people, yelling just over people, my voice was getting pretty raspy. But I think overall everything ran pretty smoothly. Didn't really get any complaints throughout the weekend, so I was happy with that. So yeah, overall went pretty good.
Awesome. And then how did the like specifically TOing go, or judging, adjudicating, that kind of stuff? Because I think at one point you had to sub in for a player, so you were like the ringer, the judge, the organizer all at once. So that must have been pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm definitely a person who prefers to just TO or just play because trying to get
Yeah.
both in, it's a little rough. So if I'm TOing, I feel like if I am playing a game at the same time, I'm not giving that person an actual game because I'm trying to go quick. I'm also trying to stop every so often between turns to go see how the players are doing, make sure no one's having any issues.
Yeah.
But overall, the TOing part was fine. There was a few questions asked at the very beginning, like a first day, which I kind of wish people had asked beforehand. But it was just about
Sure.
TMP, and that was the main thing, whether it was wholly within or just within.
Okay.
We're playing just out of the book, so not the kind of nerfed version.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then day two, there were a few more questions that day. Tensions got a bit higher, so there were some questions and stuff going on there. Um, But for changes for next year, I think the big thing is I just want to get to 32 players. If we get
Yeah.
more than that, that'd be great. I might look at, because the venue is, we have the venue Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I might look at maybe doing something the Friday night, just getting people together, maybe doing like those 500-point games on the Friday night just to kind of get together, have a few beer, play some quick Warhammer games.
Sure.
Nothing,
That'd be great.
something, something
Yeah. Yeah.
easy. And then this year also I implemented some bingo, which I think people seem to enjoy. Just kind
Yeah.
of doing different things. So because they're miscasts, if you get so many vortexes on the table, you run away, cause so many terror tests. There was a bunch of different things, so I think people enjoyed that. And if you got a bingo, there was a table with different prizes. So we had some crystal column 3D prints, as well as some pillar of fires and some charge tokens and different things you could win from it, just to kind of help. If you're not winning all your games, you're still able to go home with something in the end. So I'll definitely
Yeah.
be bringing that back next year.
Yeah, I think I think most people did enjoy it. The guys that I was playing against, differing levels of enthusiasm for the bingo, depending on the individual. But like some people were all over it, and he's like, "Hey, I think I scored this and that thing. Can you sign my sheet and stuff?" So like people
Yep.
were all over it, and the prizes were cool, like you mentioned it. But they I'd never seen this before. But like for instance, your crystal columns had like this sort of color shifting, like chromatic resin, or that they were printed with, or I'm not sure if it was applied after there. I'm not a 3D printer expert by any stretch, but I thought those looked super cool, and people I think just nabbed them right away as soon as they
Oh
got
yeah.
a bingo.
The crystals were definitely the first one to go, just because
Yeah,
I had actually it was my neighbor who printed them off. I asked him because I knew he had a good um, filament printer, and I was like, "Yeah, can you print these off?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a crystal. Do you want like I got this color shift resin, or not resin, but filament, and it's different colors depending on the angle." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. It's
yeah,
gonna look
let's
better that
go.
way."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
like all you need to do now is take it and put some flock or put your basing around the outside, and it's done. It matches the army, and you don't have to paint the crystals. So it's cool that way. So,
Awesome. Yeah, no,
but yeah, I think the big thing with the bingo is I think I made some of the things a little too hard for people, and then some people didn't bring wizards, and then there was like 3 things out of the 16 that were wizard related, maybe even more. I think maybe it's
more. I
4.
think more. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that until after. I'm like, okay, maybe I should have changed those. But that's on my notes for next year.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so what do you have? I think you have some stats, Danny, about like faction representation, and then whatever else you have on hand, right?
Yeah, I got a little bit here. So the breakdown really was for Forces of Fantasy we had 14 factions, so 14 out of the 28. For Renegades, we had 4, and I guess 5 with the ringer I had. I had Mike on Saturday playing some ogres, and then for Ravening Hordes, I had 10. So mostly Forces of Fantasy. So it's definitely the more popular of the two sides. Um, so for the Forces of Fantasy, we had 3 Wood Elves, 3 High Elves, 5 Bretonnians, and 3 Empire. No dwarves at all, which I was kind of surprised with.
Yeah.
And 5 Bretonnians, of course, is not surprising because they're one of the strongest armies in the game.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
So there's a pretty
normal.
even spread there aside from dwarves. Like that's That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. And what else? That's before the book, even.
Yeah, so we didn't allow the book. I was almost expecting someone to ask because the book got leaked if they're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be able to use any of the rules, and I wasn't going to allow it because the book would have been releasing on the event.
Okay.
But people were definitely. I think a lot of those Wood Elf players are looking forward to the book from talking to
Yeah,
them. But
I
it's
bet.
great. There
And
was three of them.
yeah, and then there's two Nuln armies out of the Empire,
Yes,
right?
that was also
Yeah.
pretty good. One, pretty much all of them. Like, I mean, the only way to play Nuln is with a lot of artillery.
Yeah.
So one of them brought like 4 cannons, a mortar, two
Yeah.
hell blasters, I think, and the other one was 3 cannons and three hellfire or hellfire.
Hellblasters. Yeah.
Yeah, hell blasters. Yeah, so it was good. It's good to see a nice um, spread of them. But
Yeah.
for renegades, surprising, 2 chaos dwarfs. So you were not the only one.
For once, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. So both of you guys were using the square-based pack.
Yeah.
Pretty much using it in full swing. Bring in your the combat lord on, or I guess, yeah, pretty much a combat character on the bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was always nice. And then we had a VC, one of the top factions in the game, and then actual Skaven on the table as well, which is great to see because you don't see the rats too often. So it's always nice to see them.
Crazy. And I think he didn't do too poorly, eh? I think he won
Oh
2
yeah,
games. Is that right?
yep, yep. I believe he went
Good.
2 and 3, so that's always nice. And then Ravening Hordes was not as exciting. Oh, I guess there's only 3 factions in there. We had 2 warriors, 1 orcs and goblin player. We did have an orc and goblin player drop pretty much day 1 before, like, I think he wasn't able to make the weekend. And then we had 4 Tomb Kings, which 3 of them were a Grand Army and 1 was Mortuary Cult.
Cults. Yeah.
So, and our local scene has usually always been a lot of undead and Bretonian. So if you're ever planning to do well, be ready for either one of those.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's the Ottawa meta is like Tomb Kings, Bretonians.
Yeah, surprisingly, not much. Like we had 1 Chaos Warrior, or no, we had 2. We had 1 Wolves of the Sea, but I guess even when you go to Toronto or when we went to S-Spot, it was. I guess the meta's not the same out there either.
No, it was that was the tournament with the crazy 10 Warriors of Chaos, 10 High Elves.
Yeah,
Made up
a
like
ton of.
40% of the field.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then was that the stats that you had for us, or
Yeah,
anything else?
I just had a kind of a quick breakdown because.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll
Or
just
is
say
that it?
that
Oh,
with it.
sorry. Okay, perfect.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. No, that's good. That's good enough. Like I'm super super happy to see like wood elves show up in numbers that we certainly haven't seen here locally. I mean, Tomb Kings and Brett's is what it is, but like Empire also we don't often see in our events, so that's cool. And then Skaven, like throwing Chaos Dwarves in there, and like more than a third of the field is some factions that you don't really ever see. So that's I think that's a real big positive, right?
Oh yeah, I'm just happy to see like it's not just Bretonians and Tomb Kings, like it is a spread of armies.
Yeah,
which is great.
Okay, awesome. Want to talk about so Ryan's not here. He was going to do this bit, but like Danny, what do you think about our podium overall? And then the placings for the event too. Like, do you think it's all representative of the meta and the podium and all that kind of stuff?
Well, definitely the first 2, pretty much as I said, there's a lot of undead in the meta locally, so it's undead's just strong. I looked at the standings: first, second, fourth, and fifth were all undead factions.
Yeah.
So it's something like you got to be ready for that undead, and yourself being in third with your chaos dwarves, like you played
cracking the undead wall. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, with the dwarves. But I mean, you brought not a typical chaos dwarf list.
Nope.
So like people either knew how to play into that or didn't, because it's a very new style. So I'll let you go over that in a bit. But yeah, I'm just happy to. Well, I would like to see a wider spread of actual finishings. But all the players that did become in the top 3, very strong players. So not going to take it. Say it's just their faction. They know what they're doing. They've played their armies pretty much for the full year.
Absolutely. Brett, who came first, is I've mentioned on this show before, a faction specialist with vampire accounts, and he definitely knows what he's doing. Well, as evidenced by his first place, amongst other things.
Yeah.
Cleary second. We've talked about him on the show tons before. Usually to speak ill of his name, but generally speaking, he is also an excellent player. So congrats to him. And then myself sneaking in there, a bit of an imposter syndrome amongst all the undead. But you're right. I did bring like a non-conventional, certainly Chaos Dwarf list, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then the rest of the podium, like, and not the podium, sorry, the overall placings, like anything else that sort of stood out to you when you looked at it, or not really?
Oh, yeah, sorry, my mic was off there. The biggest thing is just it's undead. I would like to see a wider spread of
Yeah.
factions. It does kind of change up after fifth place, but
Okay.
that's after having most of the
Most of
undead
the undead.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've
at the
already
top.
won by that point. Yeah, right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I would like to see
Good.
a wider spread. Like I know Chaos was, I think Chaos Warriors was in seventh. So like I would like to see a Chaos Stone in there. Maybe I would love to see a High Elf in there, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
They're having a
When
bit of
did the
troubles
first
these days.
high elf show up out of the three?
I'd have to check. I think it was seventh, or he's in sixth or eighth. I'll pull that up right
Okay.
now.
All right.
Take 2 seconds.
Yeah. And while you're looking that up, like, so it is
Oh,
interesting. Last year. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
oh, it's in sixth. Yeah,
Oh,
Keith got
six.
sixth.
Oh,
With
Keith,
he
my
went three and
man.
yeah, he
My
went
man,
three
I
and two.
played him. Okay, yeah, I played him.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, no, it is interesting because if I think back to like our last really large scale event that we had here, which was Capital City Bloodbath, Tomb Kings did come in first and second in that one too. And I think, and Brett, who's the first at this event, was the top legacy faction at CC player at CCBB. So like there is a like a well built tradition of as far as old world goes of undead armies doing well here in Ottawa and sort of dominating our local meta. But the interesting thing is that this doesn't seem to be the case elsewhere in the world. So like there's a real and even like if we go to Toronto, for instance, which is only like 4 hours away from here, for their events, it's a completely different situation. So there may be like a localism to this, but you are entirely correct that I'd like to see something else for sure in the
yeah,
at the top of our rankings. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good. Let's talk about some games then. I'll talk about my list a little bit. So ever since the Old World came out, I was running the same type of Chaos Dwarf list. So something different from what I took this weekend. Pardon me. If you've listened to our Chaos Dwarf sort of Tactica episode, you'll know what sort of my thoughts are on it, or on the army. But I think generally the army is sort of obviously a very high resilience, high toughness skew army that has middling damage potential and is really like a counterpunch army where it's like a blue collar army. You just outgrind your opponent slowly and then win by like a small points differential. Fortunately for me, who's played that for a year and almost a half now, we recently had the Renegades pack come out, which again we reviewed on this podcast. And that really, I think the thing I'm most thankful for in the Renegades pack, as far as Chaos Dwarfs go, is just the ability to build different types of lists. I don't think that it's better overall, right? Like I've had some good results,
Yeah.
online or in person with the army before, but I don't know that it's like flat out better in the Renegades book, but it at least brings a very different play style to the table, which is what I'm super happy with.
Yeah.
So, anyways, my list for this weekend was a general. My general was a Black Orc war boss on Wyvern. You know, the type of war boss that everybody knows and loves out there, with a bunch of stacking saves, all that kind of stuff. Then I had three Seneschals who you've probably never seen in a game of Old World. They're the hero level Chaos Dwarf characters on Great Tauruses. So the baby Taurus, essentially. So think very similar to like a a high elf noble on Griffin type of character. Three of those guys armed with great weapons, and then just an enchanted shield for a 6-up word save. Then I had a Bull Centaur Toruk, who's been moved out of the character slots in the Renegade pack and was just rocking a cool toughness 6 with a great weapon, making him strength 7, being a 360-degree charger. So that's just like a fun little tech piece to sort of zone out parts of the board. I was going to take a second Toruk, but I chickened out a little bit at the last minute and brought an upgraded Iron Demon because that's my comfort zone and I like Iron Demons. And then I brought in core 21 Infernal Guard with Fireglaves. They also had the Razor Banner and all the bells and whistles, including Black Shard Armor for a 5-up ward save against fireballs and Pillars of Fire, which have been an issue for them in the past. And then I had the requisite 5 Black Orc tax unit with great weapons. Interestingly, I think there's no magic in the list at all. This was something that I was hemming and hawing over, the last few episodes. But right before I headed out to the event, I was talking about how I was having some list angst, and it was primarily over whether I brought a mage or not, because it's like very much conventional wisdom in the old world that you should have a level 4 caster in your army if you can take one. So yeah, before I jump into sort of the idea, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying. I was just looking at your list, and like between the three seneschals,
Yeah.
the Black Orc War Boss, and the Torok, feel like it's what 1,200 points in characters.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, good. Yeah, technically, because you got the one in rare.
Yeah.
Is it rare or special for the Torok?
Special. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, which is great. I think him being able to charge 360, which I definitely didn't think about even when I saw it on the table, like just being able to charge 360. He doesn't have Swift Stride, right?
He does have Swift Stride. Yeah.
Oh, he does have Swift Stride. Okay, so
Yeah,
it's much better than I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's great.
Good.
Yeah, Mentalist
But he's
Stone,
easy to
T6.
kill, though. He is easy to kill, though. Like, if
He's
you
what?
get through the toughness, like, there's a 6-up ward save, right?
Yes, but that's the whole problem with this entire army. It's the toughness.
Yes,
Everything is
exactly.
T6 and or T6 or T7, other than the dwarves who are stubborn. And yeah, so it's if you don't have that one check, you don't have that high strength, you're going to struggle.
Yeah,
but I guess
it's the skew list, right?
Yeah, and it's a small enough event that there's a chance that you don't run into, the known 5-4 cannon and Hellblaster list.
But I did, and I'll talk about it.
Oh, you did run into it. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'll get to that in a short minute. But so anyways, my idea with this was like, I wanted to move away from like the grindy reactive archetype and go like to something that was max aggression, like a threat overload type list. I think, as you mentioned correctly there, everything except the core is high toughness. No magic whatsoever, and the army is like 4 drops. So you always get the +1. Which has been like, it's my first time that I've had so few drops, and I've actually found it to be very useful obviously in a high mobility army. And then my thinking, like, for why I sort of designed this list was that there's 2 things that are super common in the meta that Chaos Dwarfs usually just don't really have much of an answer to. And that the first thing is poison shooting blocks. They're becoming more and more common, as you know, and like I'm sure our listeners know. And when you're a high toughness army that has like 1 or sometimes 2, depending on the build you're going for, like hammers, obviously the Black Orc War Boss is the one that comes up more often, but the people across the world are also taking the Bill Taurus as like a secondary sort of hammer. I don't technically usually, but anyways, is quite common. And I think Chaos Dwarfs really struggle into those poison shooting blocks because like they'll kill your Wyvern, and then you don't have any counterpunch left, and it's really difficult. And then the second thing is single dragon builds. Like if you run into a Chaos Lord on dragon, or a Star Dragon souped up high elf prince, these could be very difficult fights. So yeah, I wanted to be able to address those problems. Like in terms of poison shooting, I guess my thinking was if I charge 4 monsters at it at the same time, it's going to stand and shoot 1 and kill 1, and then the 3 others will wreck that poison shooting block.
Oh, 100%.
So that worked out. And then the second one was the single dragon builds. I think you that thought sort of came out of our our test game that we ran together and some other test games that I did, Danny, where
Yeah.
when you have one dragon, I could just run all the monsters around you, and like it's very difficult for you to catch them, right?
Yeah, they're still quick and pretty small. Like you're on 50 by 50, right, on those guys?
No, they're on
They're on the full.
hundreds by 60s, yeah.
Oh, okay, so they're
More
on the
than
full
that even.
size.
Yeah, full
Okay.
size.
Okay, yeah, but they're still like you got three or four of them running around, and you don't have to be charging all the time, so you can avoid the big hammer and pick up the cheap stuff while the
Exactly.
dragon's trying to chase them, which can struggle.
Yeah, and it did. Like I'll go through some games in a second here, but it like that totally happened also. So yeah, okay. So let's talk games. So I show up to the event on Saturday, and the first army that I run into is Nuln State Gunline, Nuln City State Gunline. That was run by David. So his list had essentially 3 engineers, 3 cannons, 2 hellblasters, and then all of the state troops, as well as a unit of great swords. A little bit more on the sort of narrative fluffy side, definitely, as far as he was concerned for like list building, but like having the cannons and the hellblasters is an issue. Hellblasters not so much. Maybe my 1T5 monster was sort of threatened by it, but like the cannons especially could be a big problem for monsters that have like 6 wounds and basically no save against a cannonball. So looking at that game, my plan going in, it was pretty much like a perfect target for me. Aside from the cannons, there's nothing in that army that could really do much against the flying circus. I have like 5 terror causers in the army, and Empire is extremely vulnerable to being like terror, pushed off the board essentially or sent packing and running. And then the plan was, I think, very simple in this case. It's getting close combat as fast as possible. As I said, like cannons are, as you all know out there, basically auto hitting, and they can kill my large targets, except the Wyvern because it has a lot of saves there, in like 2 shots. And he has 3 cannons, so I expected to lose 1, maybe 2 monsters before I hit combat, and then I thought things were going to swing my way at that point. So how that all sort of shook out. And how I was able to execute that plan. The short answer is very well, and some of it's my fault. Some of it is not, frankly. So I deployed very aggressively in the matchup. I split my heavy hitters all along sort of my deployment area to just hopefully split up his fire and then hit as much of his line as possible, because there wasn't really a requirement to concentrate all these monsters on any specific target. David deployed pretty deep to sort of get an additional turn of shooting, I think was the plan there on his side. But, I unfortunately for that plan, I got to go first and then just went full send. He got a turn of shooting in with his cannons, of course. But like I rolled pretty hot on the saves, frankly. Like a lot of 6s came up and then no monsters ended up dying. And then by turn 2, it was sort of sealed because I was in charge range, and I think he failed a disastrous amount of terror checks, and half his army fled off the board, and then the other half fled the turn after. So I think we had like 3 or 4 combats all game because of that. And frankly, the game was sort of done in turn 3. I was trying to think of like things I could have done better, and like frankly, not much. Like the list was a bit of a hard counter to him, and then the game plan was like very simple to sort of pull off. And because of the fact that I went first and that I managed to roll pretty hot on a few saves there right at the beginning, there wasn't much of a game, frankly. After by turn.
Well, I think I remember looking at it come by, and you had everything mid table, like you had pushed up turn 1. And he shot a few cannonballs, and I think you end up passing a few of your 6+ ward saves on them.
Yeah, the armor saves even. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the armor saves. Yeah. So you're pretty much playing it like nothing happened turn 1, even after shooting, even with like maybe losing 1. Like, and as soon as he didn't kill any, I think that's the bad news bears for the Empire. And I think they're on engineer's leadership, which I think is only leadership 7 on an engineer for the general.
Yeah.
So
and
50 chance of passing a terror test when they get charged is
exactly.
not a good time.
It was rough. And then I think he forgot like I didn't remind him quickly, like I didn't catch it myself, but he forgot some of like the immune to psychology rules and like that come with sort of the null army rules.
Oh yeah.
So that didn't help, but like I wouldn't have made much of a difference.
But the only difference is you would have been in combat killing them
Yeah,
versus
a
them
little bit
running away.
more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from that game, the second game of the morning or sort of the afternoon was against Bretonnian Grand Army that was piloted by Eric. So his list was a little bit sort of off meta as far as Bretonnians go. It was a Duke on a Pegasus with the Ogre Blade and the virtue of I get hatred when I charge an extra attacks. That part is completely on meta, but there's other things here. The Green Knight, which people around the world enjoy playing against. Then there's Elise Duchard with a BSB in a big unit of knights, which is not something you see super often. Then 3 units of 3 Peg Knights. Again, not a configuration that you tend to see a ton. And then you had 2 more units of Knights of the Realm. So when I saw him matched against Bretonnia, the first thing I thought is, where's the Falconhorn? And in fact, he did not have a Falconhorn. No cannons because he wasn't exiles, no monster slayer. So I was very confident about this matchup. I think Bretonnians is already a good matchup for Chaos Dwarves as long as you sort of deploy in a way that makes sense. But when they don't have those tools, which are the issues that you're concerned about as a Chaos Dwarf player, there, that sort of led maybe to me to being a little bit overconfident. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get to the how the game went in a second. So my plan was like, there's 2 specific things I needed to handle in his army that I was concerned about. The first one was the Duke, just because like the damage output on that guy, who if he rolls D3 extra attacks, I think brings him to 8. If he gets the full 3, I mean, with the Ogre Blade and Hatred, where he's re-rolling all those hits on like his weapon skill 7. And then the Ogre Blade does a ton of damage, so that I was very concerned with. And then the second thing is obviously the Green Knight, just because he needs to be managed separately because of all his rules and how he interacts with the rest of the game. So anyways, 3 steps to that plan. The first one, as I mentioned, the Bretonnian Dukes are like no joke, and the only thing in my army that can hope to sort of take it on is the save stacking Wyvern. So I needed to engineer a situation where they end up in combat, ideally with me having the charge so that he doesn't get hatred. And the Duke doesn't just start munching through my entire army, because like he will kill those Tauruses that have no saves, obviously. The second thing is I needed to deploy in a manner which mitigated the impact of the Green Knight. Ideally, like my best case scenario is just to machine gun him with an Iron Demon, or just run him over with an Iron Demon because all his attacks are magic. But all of my heavy hitters, aside from the Wyvern, had magical attacks through ensorcelled weapons, so like they could reasonably, with their high toughness, sort of have a shot at the the Green Knight. So the most important was that the Wyvern got into the Duke, and that the Green Knight was handled by something else, and that the Green Knight didn't tie up the Wyvern, basically. And then my 4 other hammers, like as the third part of that plan, would just be sort of spread around to pick up all the other units. I really expected the Bretonnian player to utilize like his mobility to sort of fly the Peg Knights around, try to get charges off, to utilize obviously his lances across his army, and then like just stay out of my charge arcs. So that sounded to me like a decent plan that I've certainly used in Bretonnian games before. However, it did not go according to plan. So frankly, I messed up, and I didn't manage to execute my plan. So the deployment went very well. Like I ended up with 2 pieces because when we picked sides there, when we rolled off for sides, I ended up with 2 pieces of natural terrain in my deployment zone. So I had to engineer like a creative situation where the Wyvern wasn't going to get rear charged by a Green Knight and just tied down. That forced me to deploy sort of deeper than I wanted and be less aggressive than I wanted, because I needed to sort of play defense in my home base there for a bit. My opponent also chose to deploy very deep in his zone in what I would call like a very defensive manner, like all clumped up, which usually indicates that you're preparing to like get charged. And that, as far as Bretonnians go, is strange. It's not something you see very often. especially because it prevents you from using your lances. And in his case, because of how his units were laid out and the big units of knights, is just going to mean that things are going to get in each other's way. So, anyways, he was way out of my charge range. But I still needed to keep like I go first, right? He's way out of my charge range. I need to keep the green knight sort of zoned out still. So I move up quite slowly on my turn 1 and then pepper some knights with the Iron Demon. We had this very interesting situation where like that finished. I said, okay, your turn, go for turn 1. And then he said, okay, I'm not moving anything. And then the Green Knight spawned out. He came out like in the middle of the board, well away from my army. So that sort of fixed that problem for me. And he started to chase the Bull Centaur Toruk, which I was running up a flank. And I was very happy with that. And then so turn 2 arrives for me, and I'm like, okay, so let's get this Bretonnian army moving. So I move my all my models, essentially except for the infantry there, within his charge ranges to sort of bait him out a little bit. Then I get the Iron Demon to open up, and he kills basically an entire unit of Knights of the Realm. And then I was like, okay, this is good now. He's gonna get moving, and then turns to turn 2 for him, and then he just remains stationary, all clumped up in his deployment zone for a second turn. So my turn 3 arrives, and I'm thinking, this is going to be an issue because I entered his charge range, but I'm out of my charge range still because mine are shorter than his. So I end up moving up and turn 3 to get closer to him. And at that point, I run everything forwards, right in his face. And at that point, my opponent just flies away essentially. So he uses his mobility to sort of fly around the edges of the board there, and then because Peg Knights are skirmishers, whereas the monsters are not, he runs into my backfield and he kills my core and stuff like this over the next 2 or 3 turns. And the Green Knight has like a 4-round fight against the Toruk, which they both sort of come out pretty wounded out of, and he does eventually kill the Toruk though, which is fine. I managed to kill everything that can't fly in his deployment zone, so like all the Knights of the Realm, Elise Duchard, all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, at the end when we tally points, I came up about 150 points short. With most of our armies still alive, and I think what basically happened there is like I clocked myself out and just sort of fumbled the game. And then just before I give you like an opportunity to comment on my poor decision making there, Danny. I think this game was sort of what I could have done better. I think the game was very winnable for me. And the best way that I could have sort of handled this is immediately when he didn't move the first turn is just right away marched all my units up. He would have probably done the same thing and sort of fled a little bit, but that would have been fine because I would have had then 4 full turns to handle that situation rather than 2.5. So yeah, I think I could have easily clawed it back at that point, and then maybe I could have also settled for a minor win and just if he didn't want to move, pelted him all game with an Iron Demon, killed 2 or 3 units, and called it a day. But at the end of the day, I ended up moving too late, and that cost me the game. Had there been a turn 7, it would have been different, but it is what it is. So congrats to Eric. He took that well earned victory, and yeah, I learned something from it. So what are your thoughts on that, Danny?
Sounds like he kind of called your bluff. Like you were about to go full aggro, and he's like, "Well, I'll wait to see what you do." And I guess he kind of knew that if he popped his Green Knight out in your deployment, it probably wasn't going to go too well. Like I'm sure, depending on how you positioned your Iron Demon, you could pretty much almost have it sitting there waiting for it to appear to start
That's
shooting at
exactly
it.
what happened. Yeah, that's
So then
exactly
he's like,
what
"Oh,
happened.
it'd be silly for me to
Yeah,
deploy my Green Knight there just to pop out of nowhere and get shot to death." So it's like,
yeah,
okay, I'll go to another piece and deal with something else instead,
yeah.
which very smart. But I'm looking at his list and yeah, he's running the 3 units of Peg Knights, and he did the thing I was thinking as you were describing deployment and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, he's just gonna avoid your characters. That's pretty
Yep.
much what you're gonna have to do. Avoid the characters unless you can take it out. Like the Duke could probably do some work. The Green Knight, I was just looking at his stats. I'm like, can he take stuff out? I think he's strength 6 when he does the deadly blows. But it's only it's got multi wounds too. But
Yeah, but
he could,
it's not enough. Like the volume of attacks is not enough, right?
oh yeah,
Because he's hitting on fours, I think, and then wounding on fours, right? So and then you got
yeah,
some saves after. So
yeah. So it's not great, and he's only AP1, so like it's not great. He's good into multi attacks. And I originally I was like, oh, you have no magic weapons, but I forgot you have the ensorcel weapons
yeah,
like stock. So
yeah,
you'd be lower strength, and you'd only be strength 4, I think.
yeah.
But
But
essentially,
so against the Torek, it was strength 5, so he was still wounding the Green Knight on threes.
okay, okay, yeah. So he's still not bad there. But it's yeah, it sounds like they were kind of slapping each other for a few rounds and
Yeah,
did not go very far. But yeah, but it sounds like it was like he knew what he was doing. Your list is tough, so he knew that his units, like his Knights of the Realm, aren't going to do anything. So it's like, why would I move them up? They're just going to die into your unit, into your the bulls. So let's hold them back. So it sounds like he knew what he was doing.
yeah, yeah. He did. He did.
Yep. How about your
So
game
yeah, no,
three?
it was a good game. So moving on to game three. So things did look up. So I played into a Chaos Dwarf mirror match against I think your friend Evan.
Yep.
That was a good game. I've played the Chaos Dwarf mirror match. Like I'm unfortunately or fortunately lucky that I keep or unlucky that I keep hitting that mirror match in events, but nonetheless, so Evan was bringing an infernal Castellan on Bale Taurus, obviously at T7, armed with a Spell Eater Axe, which you don't see a ton of being used, but that was, I think, like a points allocation thing, and he wanted some magic resist on it. Then there was the Sorcerer. He had a Sorcerer Prophet, of course, the level 4 caster on the Lamassu, which I really like as a mount, and I often take in my army, pumped up to T6. Then you had 2 Iron Demons, and then a massive block of Hand Weapon and Shield Infernal Ironsworn. So the ones that are basically like Chaos Chosen Warriors, essentially, with shorter legs. They had the Lamassu's Beard, which is Magic Resist 2. They have a bubble of Magic Resist. They get some ward saves out of it too. So just like a really good banner. And just important to note that this was the mission with reserves. So we both chose our infantry to start off the board. So we had a very chaos dwarfy match where there was every single unit on the board was a single sort of entity. So it was all monsters or iron demons and no infantry at all. So I think some people will hate that kind of an old world game, but it was what it was. So coming into the mirror match, like my plan. So usually in the mirror match of Chaos Dwarfs, if you're not playing the Renegade pack, it usually boils down to whoever is tacked hardest into the toughness skew, and that person will take it because both of you have like middling damage. So whoever survives the most wins. So, anyways, I wasn't convinced that I could take on both of the Iron Demons, but then by the time I'd kill both monsters, I thought, I'd be doing okay on points. And that, Iron Demon damage at strength 5 from shots, is probably unlikely to really shift the balance on the match. My biggest sort of the other factor that I consider is that like my biggest advantage was that my damage output was significantly higher than his, as was my mobility. So, the Black Orc versus the Castellan, like the Black Orc has a lot more output. The Seneschals versus a Sorcerer Prophet, which, obviously being a mage, 3 Seneschals out damage by far a single Sorcerer Prophet. And then in terms of mobility, I had 5 fast movers, if you consider the Toruk, which you should because he is pretty fast, versus 2 on Evan's side. So playing this army a lot, I knew that the Black Orc War Boss could kill the Castellan on Bill Taurus, especially with the weapon that he was packing, because it's just got more output and is tankier because of all the safe stacking. And I also knew that his Lord could sort of bully my other pieces, like he would defeat my own Tauruses for sure. So I really wanted to engineer a situation where the two were fighting, the Black Orc and the Castellan on his side. The Castellan was both killable as far as I was concerned and just worth a lot of points. Usually they're around like 450. And then the second thing, sort of second part of that plan is that all my other monsters needed to gang up and kill the Lamassu. Again, he's worth around 400 points and he's not that difficult to kill. So if you could get through the toughness that is there. So that was the second part of the plan. And then lastly, I wanted to avoid getting charged by the Iron Demons if at all possible. Like their Strength 8 AP2 profile is going to wreck my T6 monsters, which essentially only have an armor save. So I wanted to avoid those for as long as possible. How that all went, the answer is quite well. I managed to sort of stick to the plan. I had to deploy my characters before him because we were both super low on drops. So I put all my flyers pretty aggressively around the center of the board, just hoping that wherever he deployed, I would sort of be in range to get to him quickly. I also put like a one unit, sort of one monster on each flank there to sort of start rolling around and forcing some movement on his part. Evan put his Bale Taurus and Lamasu near the center with his Iron Demons behind them. And then he approached my Wyvern with his Bale Taurus. So I was happy to see that for sure. And then the Lamasu was sort of supporting his Bale Taurus. So I was able, I think, start of turn 2 actually of my turn 2 to charge his Bale Taurus with my Wyvern, and then just get that fight slowly rolling. I brought in a just because of how like battlefield geometry was working out. There was one of my Tauruses that sort of ganged up on the Bale Taurus there. And then it took me a while I was starting to grind it down for sure. So the Lamasu came closer, and I managed to get a hold of the Lamasu at the end of turn 3 as he was coming in to assist the bull, and then just have him mobbed essentially by my 4 flyers versus his 1. And then at that point, it was a bit of a done deal. The contrary to my original thought, I was able to send all my monsters after the Iron Demons, because obviously they're not characters; they couldn't challenge any of the monsters, and all of them together it's too many. Even if it's strength 6 versus strength 7 for the Black Orc War Boss, obviously, but strength 6 for all the bulls against T7, it's too many attacks with too much AP for the poor Iron Demon to make it through it. So fortunately, or not fortunately, that's not true. At the end of the game, my opponent only had like the block of Ironsworn left, so it was a pretty solid win for me on that one. But I didn't play it perfectly. There's like 2 things that I think I could have definitely done better. So one thing is I had one of my great Tauruses fly off to sort of harass and threaten that big block of Ironsworn, right? Evan didn't want to turn his back on me, or have me charge his flank or what have you. And then which was the right move. And then when the game shifted, I said, I'm going to go in and see if I can break those Ironsworn. And I pulled off like an essentially pointless charge that I didn't really have a chance of winning with all the defensive buffs and the armor that they had. And of course, he lost like 1 or 2 wounds, but then one on static combat res, and just sent my poor Taurus packing. He had stubborn, so it wasn't the end of the world, but like there was just no requirement for me to do that. So anyway, I shouldn't have done that. And then the second thing is I did send like another Taurus on a big sort of flanking move to sort of push his Sorcerer Prophet forward. Unfortunately, I sent him like on way too long of an arc around like a large forest, which was just like it left him out of the battle until turn 4. And that's something I've had happen to me in the past too, where your flankers just end up not being relevant because they flanked for too long. So yeah, I think I should have. As soon as he, it was a good thought, but as soon as he moved his Lamasu forward, I should have stopped that and just dove right for it. And then I wouldn't have lost an important piece for half the game. So, anyways, it was a victory. I'm happy with how the match went, and I got along really, really well with Evan. So that was a win in my book. And any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I could definitely see, like, I remember popping by and it just being pretty much 3 Iron Demons on the table, a bunch of big characters running around, and it does seem a little silly. Definitely doesn't seem old world, but it is just Chaos Dwarves. Like, you're playing to their strength, which is these big monsters, the big train, because a lot of their units, part of being part of the Renegades, quite a few units aren't that great, so you gotta use those key pieces that are still good within the faction.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Infernal Castellan versus the Seneschal, like it's interesting. Like, I know I was talking to Evan like about his list, like having the Spellier Axe and the Lamasu Spirit. He was like trying to go for that magic resistance. That way, nothing's getting cast on him at all. Which in this matchup, you got no casters, you got no bound spells, so you don't care. You're just casting like Fist or Great Weapon to face. So yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was a lot of my opponents throughout the weekend, or people that I was talking to, were like, "Wait, you don't have there's no magic in your list?" And I was like, "Nope, there's no magic."
Yeah,
And
like
yeah,
I think if you're taking no magic user, you have to be like full aggro, like not like I'm gonna do a little aggro. It's gotta be full. Like Bretonians can do it pretty good because they are able to have the
yeah,
Green Knight. You got the big Peg Knights probably um, doing the Vanguard move and pushing up real hard.
yeah.
And then they have all this other stuff shooting at you. So it's like you have like a turn to react if you're lucky. If not, they're in your face fighting you. So even if you had spellcasters, they might already be in combat, not able to cast. So yeah,
Yep, yep. You're totally right. Like, and it's at the end of the day, I was really considering whether I would go no mage or not, and it's my buddy Brian who convinced me, because he said, take all the monsters. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen to you? Because most people these days are running elementalism or battle magic, and
yeah.
what's that going to do to your monsters? Like,
Even
sure, he'll
if
reduce like the armor save or something, but it's not like 4 illusion casters, right?
no one's running 4 illusion casters. Even if they did, they turn one off. You still have 3 more. You
Yeah,
still got
exactly.
3 other things going in. You still have an
Exactly.
iron demon. Still have an iron demon. So yeah, you're fine. They can only stop one of the 4,
Exactly.
or yeah, or is it 5? Does your list have 5?
Five with the Torque, who's
Yeah.
essentially the
Oh,
same profile as the Tauruses.
but yeah, you got what 4? No, you got 4 big guys, and then still the iron demon itself too.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Yeah,
the Bull Centaur Torque in
yeah,
rare.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and speaking of that illusion casting, that's what happened in my game 4. So I matched up into the player that came in 6th. I think Keith, the high elf player. So it's not my first time playing Keith. Always a pleasurable experience for sure. We get along really well. So anyways, Keith had brought a noble. High Elf Noble BSB with the battle banner and a lance on a Sun Dragon, and then a massive unit of 30 something Sisters of Averlorn with a Handmaiden, obviously with the Horn of Isha, and then a level 2 Illusion Caster, I think, in there with the Lore Familiar. And a power scroll so I think the game plan here obviously is you miasmic mirage a dragon using the power scroll. The turn you call the sort of the you sound the Horn of Isha, and then you just shoot it to death basically, while it can't move anymore. Also in his list, he had a level 4, I think it was battle magic caster on a Skycutter, and then a sort of a support wing of smaller units like 5 dragon princes, a lone Skycutter, and then a small unit of sisters with the ruby ring. So my plan, I've played into a few similar lists before, and the two things which matter, obviously, surprise no one in this matchup, and which I needed to have a plan for, were the sisters and the dragon. So I guess the plan for me was just be extremely aggressive. If I didn't get to him as early as possible, he was just going to gun down a big part of my monsters through like a mix of Miasmic Mirage, Horn of Isha, and then just all of the sisters shooting at them. So that first part is I got to get in there as quickly as possible. I did some math for another list that I was looking at, thinking I would run into for the event, and there's in the past I've thought, okay, maybe you deploy deeper and like you sort of try to hide and not get shot at too much, but ultimately it doesn't really matter, like from a math perspective, because of the distances involved. Like, you're always going to take 2 turns of shooting before you charge in. The only exception to that is if you have a vanguard move, or if you're deployed very, very far forward with your big flying monsters, and then you get the first turn, where you're only going to take a turn before you charge in, and then you'll take a stand and shoot. But that's a sort of a different thing. So, anyways, being extremely aggressive and deploying on the line was the first part. The second part was that for me, all of the bulls and the bull centaur for sure needed to crash that big unit of sisters as soon as possible. I assumed that I would lose 1 and maybe even 2 monsters with stand and shoot on the Horn of Isha before I made contact. But once I would get there, I was pretty confident that the 3 others would just beat them to death in close combat. So that was like the second big part of the plan. The third part was that, I was quite confident that my Blackrock War Boss could take a Sun Dragon in single combat. So I needed to, again, find a way to get those two to fight. I'd also done a bit of math beforehand, and on dice, like 30-something sisters with the horn could kill the wyvern between shooting and stand and shoot, which is something I definitely didn't want. So it was important that he didn't get in combat with them or attempt to charge them. And then lastly, I was just going to use the Iron Demon to machine gun down like the Dragon Princes, the Lone Chariot, like that kind of stuff, right? Just to rack up some points. Sorry, pardon me. How that all went. I'm much better than I expected, actually. So I managed to sort of execute the plan how I envisioned, and then there's a few things that sort of happened that sort of shifted things pretty hard in my favor. I expected like a competitive game where I was favored at the list level, but where like my opponent had a chance to score a lot of points on me coming in. But it turned into a bit of a rout very early, mainly because, I had the +1 for the priority roll and I did win it. So I marched everything right up into his face at the start of turn 1. Like I was so close that he had to walk his sisters backwards so that he could get a good stand and shoot. Actually, that he could stand and shoot at all when I charged him. And then massively, my opponent Keith failed his leadership test on the Horn of Isha, which was massive, and then made it so that the all of the sisters failed to kill a single monster between their regular shots and the stand and shoot. So I mean, at that point, it was I think it was a bit of a done deal. Although we still play through the rest of it. There was a bit of a I did have a bit of a noopsie though. So I charged the Black Orc Warboss. I moved the Black Orc Warboss forward in front of that Sun Dragon, which was good news for me, and then became great news when he decided to charge my Black Orc Warboss with the Sun Dragon. Unfortunately, I made a very basic and silly reading error. I thought that my opponent had the War Banner on his BSB, but he actually had the Battle Banner on the BSB, which is for those at home that aren't tracking, is a high elf item which gives you plus D3 combat res rather than just the 1. So that was a noopsie for me. As you can all, I'm sure, tell where I'm going with this. I did 2 more wounds during the fighting than my opponent, but obviously my opponent rolled a +3 as these things go on his combat res bonus, which made me lose combat by 1. This could have gotten very awkward if I would have full on fled or something, because the Black Orc Warboss doesn't have stubborn. But and he would have run me down, because then I would have had his dragon sort of behind all my monsters and he could kill any one of them essentially. So I was that would have been very concerning. But thankfully I just gave ground. So on turn 2, I was able to bring the Iron Demon in to support the Wyvern, and then just caused the Sun Dragon to break and flee. He left on 3 or 4 wounds, and I wasn't able to catch him, unfortunately. But seeing how things were shaping up, my opponent then decided to reform his sisters in close order before I could charge them, which was definitely a good move, and then prevented them from just dying from not being able to form up. However, I got the one Taurus into them turn 2, and then the 2 others and the Wyvern joined in on turn 3. And at the end of turn 3, my opponent conceded because he had his dragon left on 3 wounds, and the rest of his army, aside from the 2 flying chariots, was dead at that point. So it was it all hinged a bit on a single situation there at the start of turn 1, and then was a bit of a done deal after. What could I have done better? So the first thing I'm going to say is basic reading comprehension. But jokes aside, a small mistake like the War versus the Battle Banner when you're reading your opponent's list can really have some nasty consequences. If I would have failed that test on the Orc more massively, the game potentially could have slipped or been much closer anyways. And then another thing that I didn't do very well in this game is his Archmage on Skycutter. I didn't really have a good plan, and I wasn't able to really pin it down. I wanted to shoot it with the Iron Demon, but the Iron Demon was forced to sort of charge in to the dragon to repair my mistake there. Without the sisters and the dragon, though, things were pretty lopsided, so that Archmage couldn't do a ton. But still, you don't it is an an important support piece and maybe even a secondary hammer in that army, and you don't want to leave your opponent, with options on a high mobility platform like that, running around your backfield picking his targets and racking up points. So I should have managed that better. Yeah. Any thoughts on this one, Danny?
It was always interesting to watch. Like I've been like playing high elves for a little bit and trying to get them on the table more. So I'm always interested to see how like a high elf player does. And like this matchup, me and you have played one. I played into you with my high elves playing Trace and one dragon, even if it is like the big dragon. Yeah, I can pick up one of those guys if I'm lucky, but there's still a bunch of them running around, picking up all the infantry, and it can be a struggle. I do like the I'm just going through his list, like the Lothran Skycutter. It's something I've been looking at potentially doing, but doesn't really work in a Trace right now. Just to get like the high mobility, and even his noble on the dragon, not normal, but it's pretty much what other people run, like a griffin, but instead his is on the sun dragon.
Yeah.
And he even runs that Blood of Calidor, just, it is impetuous with it, but he does get that extra weapon skill. Kind of brings him up to the Lord's weapon skill, like a prince's weapon skill, which makes him a little bit tougher and a little more,
harder to hit, yeah.
Yeah, and just, a little bit scarier for other people.
Yeah.
But it's that Horn of Isha that people seem to love to use, and it's, it's a little better than 50-50 odds, but it's when you need it, it's not happening.
Yeah, it's just that big point and shoot delete button that people want to press, right? And just kill that massive dragon or what have you in a single round of shooting, for sure.
Yeah. I wish there was a way to reroll leadership just to make that a little bit more reliable, like, how the undead factions get to reroll all theirs.
Yeah.
That would be great. So, if they didn't have that, I think they'd be toned down a little bit, but who knows if that'll ever happen. But yeah, like the sisters can be scary, but again, as you said, like you charging in, potentially like the math worked out to killing like pretty much any of your big guys, like one of your big guys on the charge. Now, how would that work out if you had 2 or 3 of them charge in, or say just 2 of them charge in? You kills one. That combat res still stays there, right?
Yeah, it does. If he kills it on stand and shoot, but like I was confident that three other monsters or maybe 2 at once would do more than like the 6 wounds that it took to kill my
true.
first, right?
So it's unless you rolled terribly, but it's pretty much like sisters are gonna get hit. They hit stubborn, and then he's got to have the dragon princess go in, even though they're wounding on 5s, and then even the dragon going in.
Yeah,
and a lot of pieces, and then the dragon's still busy with other pieces. Which
exactly. Yeah. And that's sort of what happened is when his dragon fled, I was able to just overrun into the dragon princes with the wyvern. So that was just a really bad sort of time for him because they were on hand weapons basically against the wyvern, and that didn't really last very long.
Yeah.
But yeah, he also uses like his the sky cutter. I think is like definitely underrated. This was my second game playing against Keith, and I think both times he uses it very well to just run around and be annoying.
Yeah. Like they're so cheap. Like even just the lone one being 90 points, like they're cheap. They're great to kind of poke in, and even like the mage being on there, like the archmage 360 line of sight. They're fast. I mean, they're great until you run into Bretonnians with a horn, and then they're not really moving.
Sad.
Which I've run into many times with my lovely Tzeentch chariots, demon chariots. Being movement 1 is not great.
Yep, and another thing that you talked about there, that like just as we have a soapbox here, so a little bit of an opinion piece. But you talked about when you were playing against me with a single dragon, and again, this is the kind of list that really likes to shoot up a single dragon. So I think that like. When the edition started, it was all MSU, then it was all Cav, then it was all single dragon lists, then now it's all poison shooting blocks, right? So I think it's a really tough time to be a single dragon list if you want to do well competitively. There's just a lot of tools out there to manage that. There's either you kill it with something better. You use a poison shooting block, or in this case, I think functionally the sisters fulfill the same role as a poison shooting block there.
Yeah.
You use illusion magic to hold it down. You have many flying hammers, sort of what I did, to fly around that dragon and just kill more stuff than it could possibly kill because it's only fighting a single combat a turn, right? So all of that together, I think, means that the like one dragon list is a bit of a rough one. If you're thinking about list design, I would advise, if we're talking high elves, I don't know about how this will fit with points and all that kind of stuff, but like dragon and griffin or griffins, probably even over maybe a mage question mark. I think is probably currently in the meta more effective. I don't know what
Yeah,
your
like
thoughts
you
are.
could probably fit an arc, like a basic archmage, because they're I think 200 points with the level 4, and then 300 points for your noble on griffin, and then 500 points for your dragon.
Yeah.
You can probably fit that in, and that'd be your 1,000
Okay.
points. So potentially, I'd have to do the math. Like it's pretty tight in there,
Yeah.
but yeah. You probably wouldn't be able to make the noble the BSB, but I'd probably be fine.
Yeah, probably. I think so. Like even in my list, I tried to do it on one of the Tauruses and have it be the BSB, but I couldn't
Yeah,
possibly.
I keep wanting to do like the
Tough
Griffin
list. Yeah.
character, and or even when I was looking at Lothern, like doing their version of the noble on a Griffin with the Bower Seafarer for like the
Yeah.
pull thrower, so mobile, like kind of get into flanks, but that requires people to bring like units of knights that which aren't too common. So
Yeah, and I think cavalry is not as not doing as well as it did early in the edition either, right? It's it's no longer to me feels like the cavalry
no,
edition.
I think if you are, it's like maybe the undead stuff, the Chaos Knights, like it's like a bus if you are bringing like a big
Yeah,
unit of knights, like 10 knights plus 2 characters,
yeah,
like
yeah.
something like
Otherwise,
that.
they're too easy to pick up. Like your
And
6 knights
they're
of
high
the realm,
points.
are
They're
like a liability.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think it was that was a circumstance of like where the meta was at the time in terms of when Old World dropped, everybody was thinking this is an MSU game now because the big massive infantry blocks of 8th edition no longer really function. So what kills Emmet in a game where initiative on the charge is so high and there's no step up or anything. What really kills MSU units is those units of 5 to 10 heavy cavalry models that just bust through and hit the next MSU thing. But when the meta shifted away from that, I think cavalry is definitely have taken a bit of a downturn for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
All right.
I mean,
So let's. Yeah.
I will say one thing before we switch off. It was just like
Yeah.
it is a good sign of a good meta when one thing becomes big, and then the community decides, okay, the dragons were an issue. Now we have poison blocks. Get rid of those dragons. So now there's a new thing people are worried about. So like the meta is constantly adapting, which
Yeah.
is to me a sign of a good, healthy game. Like
Agreed.
sometimes local scenes won't adapt. Like they'll just have something wreak havoc. But like in the broader scene, like there is a constant change, which is nice to see. It's not
Yeah.
like we found like a final version of the game and we've stopped adapting.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. And I think like as people smarten up with how to deal with poison shooting blocks, they're going to become, I think, not the dominant. When they first burst onto the scene, you had people take like 110, night goblin shooters, but as people start to figure out how to deal with them, you're going to see those blocks just reduce in size, be like 30 or 40 or 50, and then have them as a tool in the toolbox rather than the whole list, and then the meta will move on to something else.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to my last game and then close this out after. So game 5 was I think at that point I was 3-1 in podium contention, and so was Victor, the Warriors of Chaos player. So Victor had brought a very aggressive Chaos list with a bunch of nasty hitters. It was definitely slower than my army, but it was punchier by far. So he had some choices were a little bit off meta, but still good in like a vacuum of what Chaos can do. So he'd brought a Chaos Lord on a Manticore with the Ogre Blade. He'd brought, if you're thinking at home, not a dragon. No, that's because his Chaos Sorcerer Lord was on a dragon in Demonology. And of course, the Chaos Lord is a better combat character than the Chaos Sorcerer. But when you're casting Demonic Vigor, Demonic Vessel on yourself, and then your Mark of Nurgle, obviously he was the Nurgle spell to get an extra toughness, and then you're juiced up with like 3 or 4 turns of Gaze of the Gods. Like, it starts to be a pretty nasty piece of work for sure. He also had 2 units of Dragon Ogres with giant great weapons, pardon me, a giant spawn of Nurgle, and then just all of his core sunk, which is an off-meta choice, but all of his core sunk in a massive block of Chaos Warriors, just to not give up points while the rest of his army basically ran roughshod over whatever else his opponent had brought. So looking at this game, this is the only game in the event where I felt that I could not be like the aggressor. My opponent had more hitting power and I would say more resiliency than me. Just out of all his units together, I was sort of 50-50 on my Black Orc being able to take on the Manticore. The Black Orc is obviously tankier. He's T6 versus T5, but he also has less utility in the sense that he doesn't have the Mark of Nurgle. He doesn't have the offensive output either of like a Chaos Lord with the Ogre Blade, and then I didn't have the tools of the to fight the Chaos Dragon either in his army, just because that thing is I think the Chaos Dragon is like the best sort of power piece in the game, specifically when he has a Chaos Lord. But as I mentioned, even with the sorcerer, just juicing that dragon up, like there's nothing in my army that could sort of handle that. And that's all before I even factor in and try to predict how all the Gaze of the Gods is going to start juicing everyone up. My plan on this one was I needed to play this KG. So I wanted to use my extra mobility to pull his army apart as much as possible. And because I am much faster, then gang up on things that I could kill. So specifically from the get-go, I was targeting the Dragon Ogres and Spawn as things that I could rack up points on. I know that that's not something you hear very often on Dragon Ogres, but when you have like 4 flying monsters that can gang up on them, you will pick them up. And then secondly, I wanted to find an opportunity to catch, if I could, his Chaos Lord on Manticore with my Wyvern before it got, and maybe another piece or two before it got out of control due to Gaze of the Gods. And then the third thing in my plan was I needed to find a way to play around his Chaos Dragon. Like, I couldn't kill it reliably. So my strategy was, as much as possible, to pull it away from the army, specifically to pull it away from the Manticore, and then just either trade some points in my army for time, or keep out of his charge arcs to just be annoying and have him waste time and just play around the dragon. And then how that all played out. So I managed to stick to my plan on my side, and I think my opponent was very aggressive in applying pressure, as he should with the list, right? Which gave me the opportunities I was looking for. So I deployed all over the place. Actually, I had my Infernal Guard off in one corner of the map. I had my Black Orc warrior, like my Black Orcs, on the other end of the map. I had most of the flyers spread around the center of my board pretty deep, my end of the board pretty deep. The Iron Demon sort of, again, in the middle there somewhere on the side with the Infernal Guard. And then the Wyvern as everything hidden by 4 woods, because the board ended up having 2 woods in the middle. And then just everything hidden behind those as much as possible. And then the Wyvern just right in the middle, calling out the Chaos Lord to come and try to get him. My opponent decided to send his Chaos Dragon after my Infernal Guard to collect the points, because they're like almost 500 points, right? So it's definitely a worthwhile investment. While the remainder of his army went for the Wyvern and the Tauruses. I was quite happy to see that happen, because I thought that gave me a shot at the game, really. As he got closer to me on turn 3, I think my opponent got caught up a little bit in the forest, and some of his units were having a hard time, like the Dragon Ogres specifically, maneuvering, and they were taking up a lot of board space. So he ended up placing his Manticore partially ahead of his dragon ogres, and that was kind of when I saw that happen. I was like, okay, I think this is the opportunity I need. I triple charged it with a pair of Tauruses and with the Wyvern. Managed to beat it in combat with the additional combat res, as well as like just doing some wounds to it. Right. So he fled. He rolled very poorly on his leadership test, and I was able to catch on turn 3 that Chaos Lord and kill it. And then at that point, his army was out of position, and I was just charging into the flanks and the rear with all the flyers of all the dragon ogres and the spawn, and just I killed off the rest of his army. Which obvious. I think that part obviously won me the game. On the other side of the table, the Chaos Dragon, there was a bit of a my opponent hesitated a little bit because what I did is I brought the Bull Centaur Toruk and the Iron Demon up to support the Infernal Guard, and just made it so that if he charged one, the other two were going to charge him in the flank or rear, which sort of gave him a little bit of pause. In the end, he realized, I think correctly, that things were sort of slipping, and he decided to charge my Iron Demon. The Iron Demon did 2 wounds. He rolled very poorly and did 2 wounds also. So we sort of got stayed there, and then I managed to get a pair of flank charges off with the 21 Infernal Guard, as well as the Bull Centaur Toruk. Called a challenge when we fought again, and then I managed to beat the Chaos Dragon on combat res. Unfortunately, he didn't break. And then proceeded to munch that part of my army over the next few turns. So it was a valiant effort. In terms of things that, and eventually I won on points. Like it was a minor victory because of how points were counted in this tournament, which was you needed to double your opponent's points to win a major victory. So he killed 900 points of my army. I killed like 1,700. So I was very close to that mark. And in terms of things that I could have done better is, I realized thinking about the game after that I threw away the major victory because after I lost after I won that combat against the Chaos Dragon, I charged back in because he'd lost about half his wounds, and I got greedy. I wanted to try and take it down, and immediately, of course, he challenged the Toruk and killed it. Whereas if I would have played this safe and just run off the Toruk because he was out of combat after the Chaos Dragon gave ground there, or actually fell back in good order, I could have just run off the Toruk into the sunset. The damage was done at that point, and having not lost those 200 points, then I would have definitely won a major victory. So that was a mistake for sure. Like the biggest mistake on my part, which I wish I could have seen in time. So, anyways, winning that one took me into 3rd place on the podium. And Danny, any thoughts on this one? I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I am muted. So Victor definitely had a tough list to go into, like the Chaos Lord. I played Chaos Warriors not too long ago, and just the Favor of the Gods and the Eye of the Gods table, like you can get pretty beefed up.
Yeah.
And he had the Ogre Blade. That Ogre Blade on a Chaos Lord, it does a lot of work.
Yep.
So there's not much that it can't threaten in the game. So yeah, I could definitely see keeping away from that for the whole game. It's tough. Even just like Chaos Dragon on with the Sorcerer Lord, it's a little different play, but it kind of gives them both combat potential.
Yep.
It was just fun to see. But you end up getting it in the end, which is exciting. He did lose a few points. It looks like it would have been a good game to watch. I wasn't able to watch that one, but happy with you in the end. Are you happy with the results in the end?
Yeah, I'm super happy. I guess the thing I'm kicking myself over thinking about is just that game 2 that I feel that I really fumbled. But at the end of the day, I played 5 great people. It was great to just be out there and roll dice with everybody again. I have, I think, a very respectable results. I am very happy.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully at the next event I'll be able to play into you at least, and maybe see what my army can do into yours. But
For sure.
yeah.
I've already made some changes to the list, so it won't exactly be like this, but
Okay. Yeah.
the general lines will still be there.
Okay. Good.
Okay, all right. So that covers the event. So we're going to close this one off. So next episode will be returning back to our regularly scheduled content and be doing the Host of Talcin. That should be released in like 2 days from now. We're getting quite concerned that with the Beastman book will leak before we have time really to put out the all the Wood Elf stuff. So we're going to make sure we get that squared off for everybody real quick, because I am then very excited to talk about that Minotaur Army of Infamy. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that it is not a dud for sure.
Yeah. Well.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll definitely see. I'm excited to see what it is. Like even like just the special characters that are in there, their story, and just more units. Because even like we saw the preview article even showed
Yep.
new unit, which is Gores and Ungores, which is a callback to their 6th edition roots. So I'm excited to see if those are going to be like a cool new unit or just, cool way of playing, but
Yeah.
not the best competitively.
Yeah. Because so just to be clear, you mean that there's a picture on the article where there were Ungors in a Gore unit?
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that if this is the royal host of Bretonians or if this is like just a photography thing, maybe.
Well, hopefully they didn't mix up the models and, put those models out. I think they're better at that nowadays.
Hopefully, hopefully for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what units show up in that book specifically,
Yeah.
and the
And
lore. I know there's been like some rumors about the lore, but to actually see it,
I also hope there's more units in it than the Wood Elf book. The Wood Elf book was
100%.
was a little bit of a letdown with like 4 units.
Yeah, that was a massive disappointment. 2 characters that are, I know some people are repping Orion, but I think he's not very good. And then Araloth, who's actually just straight up bad. Between those 2, then all you're left with after is Beast Packs and the Guardians of Talcin. Well, there's also the Warden of Talcin. So there's actually
Yeah, so I was just hoping for a different version of Glade Riders that were kind of like
yeah,
a Wild Hunt version.
agreed.
But yeah,
Like riderless hawks. Like I've talked about this a ton, but yeah, like
oh yeah,
agreed with you.
lots.
I think like the Creation Warhost had more units in it than basically this whole book. Right?
Yes, yeah,
So that's rough. Yeah. So hopefully the things do improve a little bit with the Beastman book. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that is. So Danny, thanks again for joining us, for
not a
joining me
problem.
actually, and subbing in for both Ryan and Andrew. And we'll see you again. I'm sure we'll have you again soon. Is there anything you wanna shout out before we head out?
I got nothing really to shout out. Just everybody get painting more models. No more gray.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. See you all next time.